All right, folks, welcome back to another Get Wired podcast. Appreciate you being here. If you're new to these kind of episodes, the whole point of these episodes is really me doing something while talking about something. Traditionally, it's the wire. We're actually out of wire. I've sold all my wire. Usually I'm cutting wire, hence called Get Wired. But, I've been sorting clothing and talking about other things while doing that. So today we're going to continue that. And last week's episode, we kind of just went through a whole bunch of questions, 11 questions, to be asking about your business. And we're kind of continuing on from that because I was looking around, and after having some conversations with some people, kind of like a scorecard around how our business is going. Now, obviously, at the end of the day, profit is the number one priority. And just to be clear, I know a lot of people don't think I make a lot of profit, and I don't make a lot of profit. We're sitting anywhere between 11 and 20% net after everything, right? But the way I look at this is from a short-term versus a long-term perspective, paying for staff, really building in and putting the bricks and mortar of, the foundations of my business. It's going to be cost heavy. But look, if you don't like that, then don't watch. I don't really care. But what I've got here is I've got 6 core themes around business. Now, this doesn't have to be reselling. This is just in general. And it's really just to go through, and there's a bit of a scorecard of 1 to 5. And you can do this yourself. So get out a notepad and pen. And we're ranking it 1 to 5, and then you take the total at the end and see where you're at. And it's about, I think it's a total of 19 different questions. I'm going to try and keep this short and sharp while doing a little bit of whatnot prep. But we've got big picture and identity, growth and direction, customers and selling, people and team, money and discipline, and then there's a final challenger kind of question. So we're going to get straight into it. This will probably go for 15 minutes or so. But yeah, let's make this happen. I'll probably talk about a few things too. Good coffee. All right, so big picture and identity. The first question is, what do you actually want to be known for, right? And how we score this is 1 means you have no clarity, and 5 means it's crystal clear of what you want to be known for. Now, for me, I want to be known for, obviously, to be honest, my end goal I'd love to be a household name. And knowing that we're providing really good value goods, we give options, we provide outfitting, and we give people that value of choice. That's what I want to be known for. Now, we're already known for that as a small business on eBay. We have a repeat customer base. They know that. But, if you were to walk down the street, no one is going to randomly know that if you just randomly ask someone. So I know what I want. I know what I want to be known for. And I'm really bullish on that. I am relentless in making these dreams and aspirations happen. So I'm ranking myself on 5 on that. But the question for you is, what do you actually want to be known for, right? In terms of the business, what are you bringing to the table, and what do you want to be, what's the legacy you want to leave? Question 2, I'm probably not going to get any work done while I do this. Question 2 is, are you building something valuable or just building busy work? Again, 1 is no clarity, 2 is crystal clear. 100% I understand what I'm building, and it's 100% value. It's a value proposition in terms of what we present to our customers, but also we're not actually just selling clothing, we're selling a service of options, a service of, convenience, and a service of cheap, good quality goods. And when I say cheap, it's not cheap and bad, but it's attainable, right? So you just got to understand, well, what is the something that you're building, and is that something valuable, or is it just creating busy noise and nonsense for yourself? Where do you rank on that one? Number 3, if your business disappeared tomorrow, who would miss it and why? For us, it wouldn't be a showstopper for the world. That's definitely for sure. I think there'll be some disappointed people knowing that, there's a large percentage that are buying on a regular basis. Obviously, wholesale customers would be frustrated. Yeah, I think there would be a bit of disappointment. Now, in terms of, crystal clear and all that, I know that, but is it really a big issue? Nah, it's not a big issue. Someone else will just fill the gap. But I think you need to understand, the point is, this is to reflect on your identity as a brand and a business and offering. If you can understand and clearly know who's going to miss you, that is your customer. That is the person you should be doubling down on. So again, where are you at? You have no idea who's going to miss you versus you have clear, crystal understanding of who's going to miss you. Let's move on to growth and direction. Is your growth truly sustainable, or is it just noise? This is a good one. And the way we look at this is 1, being no clarity, and 5, also being very crystal clear. So my growth is not truly sustainable, right? Simply because the more I keep pushing into growth, if we're talking about sustainability in terms of profit, it's not sustainable. Simply because every time we grow, I never give it enough time to actually have I think you call it like the hockey stick result, because what I'm doing is doing this and there's none of this, no going up. So that's something that I have to be super careful for. But at the same time, I'm super bullish on it. Like, I'm willing to take the bet and double down and make it work and figure it out. But ideally, we want it to be, obviously growing up in terms of profits. So for me, it's not noise. It's just probably a little bit too intense. So I know that very clearly, that there is growth there, but if I keep doing it the same way I do it, we have to keep changing, of course, then it's not going to be very sustainable. Which opportunity are you ignoring right now because it feels too uncomfortable? Again, 1 being you have no idea. 5, crystal clear. I think there's a lack of sometimes being willing to change on the basis of someone else's direction for our business, because I'm very probably stubborn and naive when it comes to where I want to be. And unless I've kind of clicked or thought or really been convinced on the idea, probably from myself, I tend to then think, I don't like that. I don't think that's going to work, because I haven't thought about it and I'm not really on top of it. But I think there's always going to be missed opportunities. There's always going to be things which, we're missing out on because we're not willing to do the uncomfortable. But for me, there's a lot of uncomfortable I'm willing to embrace. Like even doing the whatnot, I thought I wasn't going to do it. I was like, maybe I will see. It's probably not for me. And then, it's obviously changed the business in the last week and a half. So you really got to look at, what are the things which you're ignoring because, they make you feel uncomfortable. Identify those and tap into them. So if you don't have any ideas, then there's no real clarity there, is there? And I haven't really been taking notes of this, but you definitely want to make sure there's things there that are going to help you grow as an individual, like get uncomfortable. Sometimes they're not necessarily going to be the things that will change your business for the world, but they are going to enable you to be a better version, which will then play better into your business. Are you playing defense, protecting what you have, or offense, chasing what could be? Again, score 1, score 5, 5 being the best. Look, for me, I'm all 5 on this. Like, I'm going guns blazing in pursuing where I want to be. But if you're not really know where you're wanting to be, or you're a bit too protective in what you have, then, that's okay, because that's a business model. But, that's probably where you got to look at. If you're not sure of which one you're in, and I wouldn't say, playing defense is a bad thing, and that's not necessarily a 1. It just means that you need to know where you are. Are you in defense mode, or are you in attack mode? And understanding that will do really, really well for you, right? So I'm just going to actually put my numbers here quickly before I forget. So number 1, if we go back, I know what I want. Are you building? Yes. I'm going to put my growth. Is my growth sustainable? It's crystal clear in understanding that it's not, but I'm going to still bring it down because there's a bit of, I'm still not sure about that. Which opportunity are you ignoring? I'm going to put that as 4. And are you playing defense or attack? 5. All right, customers and selling. Are you connecting with your customers or just selling to them? Now, this is coming back to the whole value point of, you need to understand what is your value proposition and what are you offering to your customers. I think I can really determine how my customers are happy, obviously through feedback, through conversations, and also if they're willing to purchase something, no questions asked, and their end-to-end whole experience is still a good outcome. Because that tells me they're the perfect customer, because they're willing to buy. They don't have to think about pricing, they don't have to worry about timing, they don't have to worry about postage. To them, it just makes sense. So you've got to ask yourself from a 1 to 5 basis, 1 being, is this blind and transactional? Two, so one being blind and transactional, or five, do you have a deep connection and loyalty? Now, I know that we have a deep connection and loyalty with some, but not everyone. So I'm still going to put this as a 4 for me because, there's multiple customers that I can lean on and say, hey, you want to buy this, and they'll buy it every time. But then it's still unlocking more and more. And my goal is to try and increase our return customer base, because it's easier to sell again to an existing customer than it is to an a new customer, right? So I'm going to put that a 4 for me. Why do customers leave you? Now, this one, I probably don't really have good perspective on, simply because I don't know who's leaving me, because buying clothing can be a very one and done kind of situation. However, if I look at the reflection of why people are disappointed in our service, they think that postage is probably too much. That would probably be our lowest scoring in our feedback. But I don't think people realize that postage is that much. So, there's definitely some improvement that needs to be done there. I'm going to put a 4. If someone else copied your product tomorrow, would anyone else care? Well, they're not copying my product. Obviously, we're selling the same stock. People care and don't care. I think, again, that's why I go for a whole value opportunity, opposed to I'm just selling, we've got this came back as a return. Someone ran it through the wash and put color through it and then blamed it on us. Nice little Ralph Lauren polo zipper, quarter neck. And, anyone else can be selling this, right? So I'll probably list this at about $79. Someone else might just list it at 50. Now, we could probably both sell it for 50, but the point is I'm demanding a higher price because I know what I'm delivering is going to be top quality. They're going to get it within, a couple of days, and it's going to be good. And it's consistent. We've done all the checks. It's been washed, and there's a lot of love and care there. So for me, I'm all set on that. So I think by other people starting this, I don't think my customers are necessarily going to care. The postage one is probably where it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I feel like that's for the one and done customers. People in team. Now, this might not be relevant to you because you might not have a team. Do you have the right people in the right seats, or are you tolerating, just them being average? I'm very pleased with my team. My team has been a game changer for me. Of course, we can all do better, but in terms of what we're doing, what I want to achieve and where I want to be, it's a 5 from me. And number one, score of 1 would be there's no systems and over-reliant, or 5 being the team is empowered and they're a self-sufficient team. 100%. I can go away, I can walk out of the shop and the things still happen. So that's good. Are you developing your people or just extracting from them? Now, this is a really good point, because at the end of the day, I want my team to grow. But you have to realize that some people, when they do a job, they're doing a job to a means to an end, for money, transactional, versus some people are doing a job because they want to build a career, they want to be somewhere, and they want to, reach a goal or an ambition. So I've always made sure I understand what people want out of my, roles and jobs, simply because that is their motivator. And I want to help them be successful. I want to help them get what they want because I want them to help me get what I want. But it's always important to understand that. I'm all on top of that. That's fine. 5 for me. If you left for 6 months, would the business survive or collapse? I think the business would be okay. I would probably have more of a breakdown than they would. There would be a few things which would need to be cleaned up big time. I'm going to still put it as a 3 though. Definitely not a 5. It would work, but there's a lot of things which are bottlenecked on me still looking at that. So definitely something to think about. Let's move on to money and discipline. 1, you're flying blind. And 5 is you're lean and you're data driven and you understand your numbers. Money and discipline. Do you even know the true cost of acquiring a customer? Now, this is really important. Our return on ad spend varies all the time. And that's not really the cost of customer, because, sometimes you have to sell a product and then they come back and then you're actually, can say that they are a customer because they've been happy with the transaction. But our average cost, our return on ad spend varies between 10 and 12. So every $1 we spend, we get between 10 and $12 back. So to acquire a customer is costing us usually that price, plus it's costing us whatever obviously the cost of good is of that item to sell to them. And then we sometimes take a loss to win them over. when I say take a loss, so we don't take a loss in terms of profit, we take a loss on the item in terms of total revenue opportunity. So let's say an item's worth $40, customer might come along and say, hey, I'm not really sure about this, can I buy this for $30? So you've lost $10 on it in terms of total opportunity, so you're not going to get as much on it. So our total customer acquisition cost, look, the cost to sell an item for us at the moment on average, including everything in the warehouse, is about $34. I think it's $34. I can tell you that. It might be $43. What is it? At the moment this month, our average cost to sell is, $38.40. And what that means is to sell an item, it costs us that much money. Now, that doesn't necessarily always mean a customer that doesn't always mean winning over a customer, because usually a first-time customer is sometimes harder to get. But once you've got them, you don't have to resell to them and they start to sell for themselves. So I think it's really important. This is a very hard number to kind of grasp when it works with eBay, because it's not really you going out, doing SEO, doing marketing and ad spend off platform to bring them in. On platform, we already see those visibilities, but it's not tied back to the customer as clear. But yeah, I mean, I know it, and it's high, unfortunately. Where are you bleeding money that you're choosing not to see? Oh, geez. Probably, overbuying stock. I tend to operate 90 days ahead. So the reason why we grow so quick, what you guys might see that, we're jumping so quickly, is because what I'm doing today will mean in 90 days, I see the result. Simply because it's the stock I buy, the implementations I'm doing, the investment of staff and all those different things. So we're always running about 90 days behind in terms of where I'm actually possibly could be. So I think in terms of bleeding money, there's been some fat in some of the postage, trying to lean up those systems, and then also speed to market, the ability to be able to get our stuff listed and photoed, and cutting out some of the fat in that. And some of that has been myself as a bottleneck, but definitely where we can fix. Sure, I could get rid of my staff and I could do all the work myself, but I don't want to do that. I want to be able to have the business continue to grow. So I think where we're bleeding is from the input that we're putting, the output hasn't actually necessarily exponentially grown to the point of, tripling or quadrupling our results. And I think some of that is, still getting the quantity of listings up. And because I'm the one clicking go live, that's on me. There's definitely some things that we need to fix. And I'm going to put that as probably a 3. I'll put it as a 4. All right. Are you tracking vanity metrics or the ones that actually matter? So I track all my numbers. I know my profit. I know everything. Yes, we track revenue. The reason why I track revenue so intensely is because as we continue to scale, the cost to do things become more fixed. And what that means is if we increase our customer order value, if we're able to increase our customers, if we're able to list more in the same amount of time, if we're able to photo more in the same amount of time, it reduces our cost per item or the cost spread. And what that means is if we're able to sell more, that means our profit will grow more, simply because we haven't had to increase our cost to be able to sell more, other than the cost of good because you're selling more. So the reason why I'm so bullish right now, we've been doing clothing for 2.5 years, almost 3. The reason why I'm so bullish is because I know there'll come a point where it will start to plateau in terms of the cost and the ability to be able to have to spend to have these things happen in speed. When I say speed, it's not rushing, it's just, getting it up as quickly as possible, efficiently as possible. And that's when we will see the reward. But because I'm still figuring out a lot of that, and a lot of that I'm reactive in terms of opportunities, like getting all this and all the stuff coming later in the week, that's when, I quickly have to react, do all these things, put things in place and jump on top. And then we have to play catch up again. So I track all the numbers. I've got every detail. I've got cost to profit percentage return, average fee, average cost to post, average cost to sell, average profit per item, rebuy opportunity, return on investment, cycle time, revenue, profit, right? All these different things. You need to know your numbers. It's super important. And that's the beauty is I know my numbers on the basis of where I'm trying to go to. and if we're ticking the boxes of where I want to go to, then the numbers are irrelevant to anyone else. But yeah, we've got to be careful that we don't get stuck up on revenue on the basis of like, it makes our business look great when really it's bleeding at the bottom. And like I said, we're not making much profit, but that profit covers everything we need to cover in order to keep going. So what's the issue? But of course, I want more money. I want to be able to doing 10x the amount of profit. But to do that, we're going to have to change things. And to change things, that takes time as we continue to refine and do better. All right, so that's that. Now we're moving into the last part, which is known as the challenger set. And this one is like score 1 is if you're avoiding it or you're just creating chaos. And 5 is you're being proactive and you're being focused. Number 1, what's the work you're avoiding right now that would change everything? Whew. I don't think there's anything I'm avoiding. There was a few things, cleaning things up, changing processes. But, like I'm continuously pushing, like there's things that I deprioritize because they don't become as important. But, in terms of opportunities, in terms of what we can be doing and should be doing, I continuously push to the front, like the forefront of that, because I know that it's good for the business. I think as I continue to grow, now that we're doing volume, there's little things that we can do, like changing from padded mailers to satchels and all these little things, because we save 30 to 50 cents on average. Those little things we're starting to find now because we can see it at a volume level, opposed to just, 10 sales here and there. But no, that one I'm all good for. Are you running the business or is the business running you? I'm running the business. Like, I think if I look back from a year ago to where I am now, and this is a good question for you, right? Is like, is it controlling you or are you controlling it? Obviously, I put so much work into this and I love it. And that's why I do. This is not a job. This is my passion. This is my building of a dream. And when you put in that time and effort, sometimes, it's hard to pull yourself out of that because you get disconnected from all the other things that are happening in life. It's like playing a video game. If you love the video game, you can be playing it for hours and hours and hours and you realize, oh my goodness, it's 2:00 in the morning. I got to go to bed. That's what I love about it. And, here I'm doing, in the last 3 months, I've been doing more hands-on in terms of on top of the business, opposed to actually hands-on operational of the business. And I'm working on new things. I'm having meetings with other people. We're working on a new arm for the business, whatnot. We're doing all these different things. And that tells me that, I'm in control of it. There's still a lot of things that I want to be doing better. But if you're having to be reactive and you can't be proactive, then you really need to understand what needs to change. And where would you rank yourself on that? So are you being proactive or are you avoiding things? If your competitor bought your company or business, what would they cut, keep, and double down on? Geez. Yeah, I think if my competitor, I think what they would do is they would probably change my volume-based approach. I think obviously there's a lot of people that love doing high ASP and low volume, because to get to that point of high volume and high profit, you have to get the process right. But the actual key is like, so you could be a one-man army and smash this, right? It really comes down to cost of good, because I could have no other team members. I could be doing this home now that I know how to do this, and I could just be listing Levi's all by myself and I wouldn't have any cost. So the reality is I've built this model figuring out how to do clothing while trying to build up other people to do it in parallel. Whereas now that I have the knowledge, ideally the best thing to do would have been like, cut everything, stop doing the warehouse, start in a small room, have the clothing and just turn it over. But it's not that simple now, because I know that if I want to dominate, if I want to be ahead of the game in terms of in front of other people, I need to be doing more, right? If you can sell 10 pairs of Levi's because you've listed 10 pairs of Levi's, so how do I get 100 up? How do I get 1,000 up? How do I do this and do it well with quality? So I think that's what most people would do because that's their quickest win. However, I think they'll soon realize that there's a lot of processes and systems involved. So it doesn't necessarily make sense to cut the low volume, the low items. It's probably making sure that, it's relevant to the current trends of what's happening. Now, I get a lot of stock, clearly, and that means there's a lot in there that has to be sifted through. So is it worth wholesaling it, or is it worth selling it on eBay? Or now, is it worth putting it on whatnot? So there are definitely some big questions. What would they double down on? E-waste, I think. E-waste is where there's a lot more opportunity, but the relevancy of getting it here hasn't been as easy as possible. But I also think people would be, if I was looking at my business as an outsider, I'd be looking at, it's like, well, how can you take what you have and make as much money from it as quickly as possible? Now, when I say as much money as possible, as quickly as possible, that might mean if you've got 5,000 items and you don't have to do anything for them, and you're able to buy them for $5 and you can sell them all for $7, right? So sure, you might have purchased 1,000, let's just say it's 1,000 items for $5 each, so that's $5,000. If you can sell them all in the same day and profit $2,000 because you sold them all for $7, I mean, that would be ideal, right? So, because then you're making so much, you're making $2,000 profit and you've done one day's worth of work. So that would be actually the best way to do it, rather than doing individual. However, there isn't necessarily people willing to buy that volume. So it's easier to deal with, a mass market of, thousands of people on eBay and achieve those goals. But if you can uplift their average order, so instead of one person buying one item, but they want to buy 2 items, all of a sudden you're able to move items for the same price, like in terms of fixed cost to be able to do it. And you're going to get double the amount of revenue and you're going to increase your profit. But I think that's, interesting thing. I think people double down on how do they get as much turnover as quickly as possible while making as much money as possible at the same time. That's where I think. So there's definitely some things there that need to be fixed. I'm going to say 4. And what's the one hard truth about your business you don't want to admit out loud? I mean, it's not that I don't want to admit it, but it's low profit. But I've embraced that. There's sometimes things which don't go to a good flow of happening. Like, I'm jumping from this, jumping to that. We're all over things. Things aren't going the way they should be. So, I react in a different way. And, we're always jumping between different things. But I guess that's my job, is to continuously pivot. But I think if we look about that, is like, I need to have a very, very strong plan on how do we get the bottom line up, opposed to just assuming it's just coming. And that's my number one priority. And, doing whatnot, finding other avenues, different deals, different opportunities, and different ways to increase our ability to do input for output. That is probably my biggest thing. So, there's probably a lot more there. I'm going to put that as a 3 because that is the basis of us getting a better business. So now what you want to do is you want to tally up everything, and I'm going to do this very quickly for myself. So I got it was a 5 plus, so 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5 plus 4 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 3 plus 5 plus 4 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3. So I got 105. Is that right? Yeah. So what you want to look at is if you're up the top of the scale, then, you're already in a top bracket. You've got clarity, you've got systems, you've got momentum, but now you have to refine things. You have to speed things up and you have to double down where it's with. That's where I'm at, right? Is getting those small things that can make such a big change. It's like the 80-20 rule, what can we do that we can make a change of 20% that's going to give us an 80% uplift kind of thing. If you're a bit lower down, so probably closer to 65, 79, solid foundation, but there's some hidden gaps. You're doing a lot right, but there's some blind spots. The challenge here is comfort. You're good, but you're not yet great. You got to lean into some of those weaker areas and push them to the next level. If you start getting closer down to the 45 mark, you're stuck in survival mode. You're juggling, reacting, and patching holes. Progress is possible, but you're held back by inconsistent systems, unclear direction, or a lack of focus. You got to choose a weak area and fix it first. And if you're real bottom, closer to like 19s or 44s, it's a wake-up call. Too many hard truths are being ignored. The business is running you, and it's time to strip things back, confront reality, and commit to rebuilding strong foundations. Now, if I was coming into my business with what I know now and looked at this business, I would be looking at it thinking, how did we get here? And because I'm in the situation where I now have a warehouse commitment, I have staff, I'm still fixing a lot of the mistakes that I made earlier because I was moving so quick. And this is where it gets a bit of a trap, because as much as we all want growth, I mean, I want growth, that's what I'm all about. As much as we want those things, we have to be super sensible and careful that we do not overcommit, that we do not do things that we're not willing to embrace. And I think that's the only reason why I've been able to be so resilient as I have, because I know where I want to be going, and I know that I'm willing to, I'm willing to accept the risk. I have a higher risk tolerance for it, and I'm willing to figure it out. But the reality is like, that's not sustainable for everyone, right? It's like, if you compare to like some of the big OGs, Amazon's a good one. Even Jeff Bezos, he started with an investment from his parents of like $250,000 to be able to go run and just burn the money and build the business. The reality is like, we don't have that, right? I've used my own money to make this happen. And, I've definitely made all that money back over the period of time. But if you want to slingshot your business, you either have to be able to do all this without having to grow, right? Like when I say grow in terms of processes, operations, and just be consistent and just do simple things, make it happen, and keep your cost of good low. Even if you have a higher cost of good, as long as you've got the, obviously the sale price super high. Like, so for instance, if you've got a cost of good of $10, but you're selling for $50, that's a really good point to be at. Whereas if you've got $10 cost of good and you're selling at $30, that's where, there's going to be a lot of, friction and squeezing, especially if you have overheads. If you don't have overheads, then, it's happy days. But that's my continuous tug of war, simply because at the point of where I am, we have to continuously make adjustments and changes in order to get to where I want to be, to continuously make this model work. And that takes time to get right. That's all I'm going to say. I'll leave it there, folks. If you enjoyed this episode, please, drop a comment, drop a message down below. More than happy to continue the conversation. I've got to go do some work now. And we'll be back here again next week doing it all again. Ciao.